Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, good people. So the Peace Corps was established 60 years ago this year, and to mark the occasion, the NIH Record ran a front page article about this young researcher, straight out of college, working at NIH for a while, who's joined the Peace Corps and going off to Africa. And so thanks to the Google, we were able to find 82-year young Judith McKay hiding in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and pulled her down from the mountaintop. And she's here to join us. I'm delighted to introduce the amazing, the wonderful Judith McKay Sides, who's going to talk to us about her experiences. This is going to be in 3 parts. Peter is going to introduce the segment about before Peace Corps, so NIH, and I'm going to introduce the segment about Peace Corps years, and then Peter's going to introduce about after Peace Corps years, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end that we'll moderate. And so thanks for coming, everybody. Peter.
Great. Thanks, John. And Judith, welcome. Thank you so much for making the time to meet with us. And we've really enjoyed just meeting you briefly leading up to this. And you can see you're a big attraction. We've got quite a few people that are eager to hear from you and learn about your experiences. So let me just start off asking about your life before Peace Corps and how, you know, a young woman from North Carolina and Peace Corps was brand new. How did you ever end up saying yes to the challenge, the call to join Peace Corps? Tell us about your life before Peace Corps.
Okay, I'm 82 years old now, and I like to boil things down. So thanks to John Schell, who tracked me down, I boiled my life down last week to 10 pages. And then I reboiled it down to 5 pages. So naturally, researching at NIH and volunteering in the Peace Corps were 2 of the major highlights of my life. Now that was 60 years ago, 60 years ago. It was like yesterday. So here's my essence. Be friendly, useful, helpful, apolitical, make do, and have fun. And that's what I've done. I graduated from Duke University in the class of 1960 with a Bachelor of Science in Zoology. I was Phi Beta Kappa, a closet pre-med. I sang in the Duke Chapel Choir. I summered at the Duke Marine Lab, collecting fiddler crabs at low tide, chopping off their eye stalks, and studying their chromatophores. Duke Job Office made me 3 appointments in September in the Washington area. The first one was, well, first I went on by bus to DC and I checked in to the YWCA. The first one was at Johns Hopkins and it would have been with fruit flies. Then there were 2 at NIH, the NIAMD. The first was in electron microscopy, and the second was in hematology to be a lab assistant with Dr. Fred Stohlman, a large, brilliant man who was the editor of Blood magazine. I chose Dr. Stohlman. This was my first paid job was at NIH. I was a GS5 for $5,000 a year. I rented a tiny spare bedroom in somebody's house in Bethesda, and I walked back and forth to NIH. I ate hard-boiled eggs and canned soup. I slept on a stretcher. I went to the mall every weekend and I revisited the Museum of Natural History, the gallery, Mellon Gallery, and the Boston Botanical Gardens, yes, and the hot shops. And I sang in the National Cathedral Choral Society. Dr. Stohlman was a wonderful boss and the best mentor I could ever have wished for. his lab was like a family. We were working on erythropoiesis. I had to wash the glassware and rinse it 9 times in distilled water. Helen tutored me in doing hematocrits and hemoglobins and white blood differential cell counts. Donald tutored me in randomizing white rats, irradiating them to destroy their blood production, and then injecting IV calculated concentrations of erythropoietin in certain schedules and counting the blood counts as the rats were recovering their hemopoiesis. The source of our erythropoietin was Randy Whitefeather, a 10-year-old boy, Indian boy in Minnesota, who had aplastic anemia and very high levels of erythropoietin in his urine. My job was to condense gallons and gallons of Randy Whitefeather's urine and extract the erythropoietin and prepare different concentrations for us to inject into the recovering rats so we could follow their hemopoiesis. Helen and I did all the blood counts and saved the data. My first evaluation with Dr. Stohlman, he requested 2 improvements. The first was to stop carrying 2 large flasks of Randy Whitefeather's urine at the same time. And the second was to spend less of my work time reading articles on our experiments, do that at home. So in January 1961, Washington was all excited about Kennedy's inauguration. So Fred's secretary, Marie, got some tickets for hat check girls at one of the 5 inaugural balls in Washington. This one at the National Armory. We were paid $25 each. The National Armory held 14,000 people. And it was very, very snowy. And Jackie was post-op from her cesarean section, so the presidential couple did not dance. But the evening was a blast, and I bought snow boots with my $25. I wore them for many years. Now, the other thing was that Sergeant Shriver was setting up the Peace Corps, and there was a lot of publicity about that. So it sounded like a good way to travel the world at another's expense, with supervision and health protection and $75 a month in escrow. So on a fluke, I went downtown and filled out the application. No, there was no interview. So I received a telegram inviting me to show up in East Lansing, Michigan in September to train with the group that was going to depart Nigeria in November for 2 years.
Judith,
Yes.
that was amazing. Thank you for that story. Everyone on the screen for the last 10 minutes has been smiling, listening to your story.
That makes me happy.
Go
Judith,
next.
I just wanted to ask Judith, what did your family say, or what did your colleagues say? I thought you were crazy or been worried about you. What was the and how did you?
My family had qualms because they were Southerners, and other people thought it might be a good idea. I didn't have much flashback on that. No. So anyway, I told Dr. Stohlman, I told the Peace Corps, and I told Dr. Stohlman that I would join. So the lab gave me a party, and they gifted me with a big atlas, a big world atlas, so that we could look in there and discover where the location of Nigeria was. So that's my story at NIH.
Okay, John, over to you.
Thank you, Judith. That was awesome. All right, let's move on to the next chapter, and let us share your story in the Peace Corps. What happened next?
Okay, so there was Peace Corps training. That was September 1961. 30 candidates converged at MSU. Our age range was 21 to 65. Some were teachers, but not all of us. We were to serve as a cohesive group at the newly built University of Nigeria, Nsukka. That's NSUKKA. Nsukka was a land grant university, and they were affiliated with MSU. The Americans were going to comprise about half the international faculty, along with British and Nigerian and others. Little did we know that we would constitute our own departments. So anyway, we were a miscellaneous group, including 10 women and 20 men. We had a veterinarian, a chicken farmer, a school principal, a physiotherapist, a chemist, an accountant, a historian, a violinist, a mechanic, a philosopher, a mathematician, a home economist, an entomologist, a lawyer, and a social worker, and several others. Our 2 months training was fairly relaxed. We got acquainted. We got tested by a psychologist. We got examined and vaccinated. We played games and made music together. We read and were lectured about the history of British exploration, colonization, and empire. We heard more about Britain than we did about Nigeria. We learned the geography of Nigeria, the West African coast, the Niger River dividing the country into the north half, which was Hausa and Fulani, and the southwest was Yoruba land, and the southeast was Igbo land. We were instructed and warned about tropical diseases such as malaria, schistosomiasis, filariasis, West African sleeping sickness, roundworms, tapeworms, and other infections and parasites. Very importantly, and this is very importantly, we were imbued with a make-do philosophy. That's the make-do philosophy. So we were the third Peace Corps View group launched. Columbia one went to South America. Nigeria one went to Ibadan University. It's an older, well-established British style where the people wore black academic robes and the lecturers stood behind podiums. While Nigeria 2 was training, Nigeria 1 nearly imploded because of a scandal. One of the girls dropped a postcard home and you may remember this from the newspapers, some of you, where a girl dropped a postcard describing the open sewers running in the capital, Lagos. And there was an outcry on the campus and all over Nigeria, and they wanted to throw out the Peace Corps. So this cautionary tale was burning in our minds as we flew away to Nigeria. Nigeria was in the midst of celebrating their recent independence, and they did not appreciate the insult. So we kept that in top of our minds. So that's what happened before we had arrived in Nigeria.
Thank you, Judith. Those are very, very cool details. All right, you're in country, now what?
Okay, so what did we find on arrival? From Lagos, we went on bus, traveling east, and we crossed the Niger River by ferry because there was no bridge yet over the Niger River. Then we were in Igbo land. Nigeria turned out to be a tiny village on a high bare plateau with a cool breeze, believe it or not. So the buildings were all brand new in red brick. The Nigerian and the British staff lived in faculty apartments separately, and they employed houseboys and cooks and drivers. And the Peace Corps volunteers, the PCVs were quartered in single rooms scattered among the students in the two dormitories, men's and the women's. Initially, we were regarded with curiosity and suspicion because we were informal, approachable, and casually dressed. We shared 3 VW buses, and we washed our own clothes and the vehicles. There were no specific assignments scheduled or set up for us. Each of us had to use our inner resources and create a position for ourselves in the academic community. So we organized our own Peace Corps kitchen in a large meeting room in the women's dorm. And we ate hamburgers, canteen style, at long tables. Now, the Peace Corps family adopted Bridget. She's an Anglo-Irish VSO, that's voluntary service overseas, and that's like a predecessor of the Peace Corps. So we adopted Bridget. She had been assigned alone as a group of 1 to teach French at Nsuka. And Bridget and I became best buddies. So each PCV had to plan how to be useful. 3 of them decided to request transfers to other places in the bush environments to be apart from other Americans. I had expected to teach biology. So I teamed up with the veterinarian, and we decided to start a course in veterinary technicians. We contacted the Obudu cattle ranch in northern Nigeria mountains, and we went up there for a visit. And we collected fecal samples from 60 zebu cattle, the kinds with humps on their backs. And we did a parasite survey. We found a microscope and slides. And the parasite survey was to help with the health of the herd of zebu cattle. We requested and we received the well-picked bones of a cow that was slaughtered for a holiday feast for the ranch hands. So we took the boiled bones back to Nsuka, and they were articulated into a skeleton, a complete skeleton, by our animal caretaker, Michael, who had an uncanny ability. And he made a gorgeous, complete cow skeleton, mounted it on a door with handles so that we could carry it back and forth to the classroom. I have a picture of that, and it's beautiful. And then we started teaching anatomy from that. Next page. I had imagined teaching piano wherever I went. So the music department consisted of 1 independent Black American woman who was popular on campus. So her idea was to stage an opera, Aida. And the students and the staff were enthusiastic. So a Scottish math professor and a Nigerian girl student were the stars. And I was the orchestra, 1 piano. It was a rollicking success, it really was. In the second semester, the student, probably about 500 students, went on strike about the food quality in their refectory. We were relieved that we controlled our own menu in the women's dormitory. The school solution was to rusticate the entire student body for 6 weeks and invite all except the troublemakers to rematriculate. We use that time to work on curriculums and go traveling over the countryside, visiting our favorite students and their families. So that's what I did in the Peace Corps.
Thank you very much. That's awesome. So what did you wear as a teacher in the classroom, and what did your British counterparts wear in the classroom?
Some of them wore jeans with the knees out, and we tried to wear dresses, the girls. We did not wear academic robes. No.
So Peace Corps wearing dresses and jeans, and the Brits were wearing robes.
Yeah. We were different, but people came to respect us once we started teaching and making a lot of friends.
Awesome, Judith. Everyone, by the way, on the screen is still smiling throughout all your stories.
Okay, so shall I go on?
Yeah, so please, Judith, do tell us about then re-entry to the US and what happened to you in coming back to the US and
Okay.
ongoing connections you had with Africa.
Okay. Well, time flew, of course. So next thing you knew, it was late the second year and I had to decide what to do next. So I decided it was time to start medical school, which I had never confessed that I was going to do. I contacted Dr. Stohlman and I asked his advice where I might apply. He suggested Tufts and he offered to vouch for me for an interview because I was out of the country. I sat the MCATs at the appointed date as a group of one in Nigeria, supervised. Meanwhile, Dr. Stohlman had moved from NIH to Boston and he was a professor of medicine and research at Tufts. So 1 week after I returned to the US, I started medical school. And that was September 1963. The class of 1967 numbered 106. We were 6 women and 100 men. Most of them were fresh out of Tufts and Harvard. The men were housed at TUSM in a dormitory and they studied together. The women had to live somewhere else. So I got a tiny little 4th floor apartment, walk up at $40 a month on Beacon Hill, just across the street from Mass General Hospital. I walked to class daily across Boston Common to Chinatown. And while we were dissecting our cadaver, President Kennedy was shot. So we all cried and went home that day. And in my junior year, 1966, I got a Smith Klein and French Foreign Fellowship to be an intern for 3 months at Emekuku Hospital in Owerri, Nigeria, and revisit friends. I added an initial month to in London at St. Mary's Hospital, Paddington, hanging out with the pathology students. And my buddy Bridget heard that what my itinerary was. She promised to write her Irish bachelor cousin, Richard, to take me out. And he did. And he was the handsomest man I've ever met. He, for several years, was a district officer in the colonial service in Kenya until Kenya's independence. And so now he was working at Ford Tractors in Basildon, England, near Southend-on-Sea, to be near his sailboat. We were engaged by the end of that month. And then I continued to Emekuku to do my 3 months internship. It was run by Irish nuns. And you can read my marvelous medical and surgical experiences there in the November 67 Tufts Medical Alumni Bulletin. And John is going to send that out. Yes. I think you'd find it a good read. You can also Google it. Bridget prognosticated that we would become second cousins once removed in law, she and I, and we did. So Peter, that's what happened in med school.
Great. Then tell us what happened next. What happened after med school? And I just can't help interjecting. You and I have so many parallels. I also went into the Peace Corps having done all the pre-med requirements, but didn't decide until later to go to med school. And then during med school, I must have gotten the same travel award that you got from Smith Beckham to go. I went back to the Congo with my funding. So it's remarkable parallels, but please tell us about post-medical school.
Okay, so I finished my senior year of med school, skipping the dreadful process of applying for internships. I was intending to sit the British exams for MBCHB, that's Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, and continue medical training in the UK. So in June 1967, Richard flew to Boston for my graduation. And then the next day we flew to North Carolina for the wedding and to meet my family. And then the next day we flew on our honeymoon to Ireland to meet his family. I sent one trunk of my medical books and clothes to his address in Billericay, Essex, England. That's near Southend-on-Sea, where he kept his sailboat. Then I became an English housewife. Richard taught me to drive. He taught me to cook without a refrigerator. He taught me to bake apple pies and to tile floors. Every day I studied my books with my feet up against an electric grill to keep warm. We did not socialize. My only friends were two spinster sisters next door who had a piano. So we had cups of tea and played Bach duets. I sat the British exams and I twice failed the surgery part. So we traveled. And Ford tractors sent Richard and me to Nairobi for 3 months, where he was to organize the Kenya inventory. That was great fun. We spent the weekends at the game parks and revisiting Richard's haunts from when he was a DO there. And during the weeks, I hung out at the pathology department of Nairobi Hospital. Next page. So after 2 years of in desperation, I decided to return to Cambridge, Massachusetts to do an internship and residence in anatomic pathology at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge, Mass, and to sit the national boards and to earn my medical license, which I did. Richard decided to follow, so he sold his Land Rover, his boat, and his house and sent his furniture to Cambridge. Meantime, I was sleeping on the floor in an empty apartment, and I was able to watch the moon landing in 1969. When Richard came, he enrolled in MIT at the Sloan School for a master's in management. Then he got a job at Hood Sailmakers, and we bought a boat and a house in Marblehead so he could race in the Atlantic Ocean just yards away. So with my new medical license, I reconnected with Dr. Stohlman of NIH, and I became one of his 6 graduate hematology research fellows at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Brighton, Mass. I was also attending Dr. Stohlman's fascinating patient rounds after work. So we were doing stem cell infusions in irradiated rats and studying hemopoiesis, not just erythropoiesis, but the whole hemo. We were assisting the rats with different concentrations of erythropoietin, which was now, by this time, it was available under the trade name of EPO. So we used EPO. My job was harvesting the rat spleens and looking at counting the tiny white dots, which were cell colonies, blood cell colonies, and serial sectioning them, in which you could, and staining them and classifying whether they were white cells, red cells, or platelets developing in that particular cell colony, and making photographs microscopically of the colonies and writing up a report and presenting it to all the fellows. And the day that I did that, I was hugely pregnant 1 week before my due date. So I presented my project, and then I went home for maternity leave. Some weeks later, one of the fellows phoned me to report that Dr. and Mrs. Stohlman both were killed in an airplane explosion over the Ionian Sea on their way to a medical conference. That ended my research career, Peter. So that covers NIH, the Peace Corps, med school, and research.
Thank you. And so what then, after that really unfortunate, tragic end to your collaboration and friendship with Dr. Stohlman, what did you go on to next?
So I went into practice with my new license. So our daughter Annie was soon followed by our son Robert, and I assisted an older established GP in town, and I covered his office and practice whenever he went sailing. Marblehead, everybody knows, is a sailing town. So I ran the student health service at a nearby Salem State College for some years. And I opened my own little office at home in gynecology for young women. So then after retirement, I returned to North Carolina, and I joined the Asheville Choral Society in Western North Carolina in the mountains. And I enjoyed medical transcription at the local hospital. I call myself the most overly educated transcriptionist in the history of medical transcription. So now I'm sewing lots of face masks for the Manna Food Bank to distribute when they deliver groceries. So, and doting on our grandsons. That's my life in 5 pages. And I challenge you all to do the same do it yourself. It's a very interesting exercise. And my essence is still the same. I'm going to repeat it. Be friendly, useful, helpful, apolitical, make do, and have fun. And that's what I've done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's such a great
You're welcome.
story, and you've told it so well. You've condensed it so well to be able to share with us. So thank you so much for making the time with us and sharing so much of yourself. You've been really generous in both regards. What do you think? I wonder if you have any just insights into what's happening now with COVID and with your own experiences with medical research or with public health, with health programs. What do you make of what's happening in the world these days?
Well, I have to confess that at this age, things don't matter as much to me. And I'm just enjoying my dotage. Sorry.
That's actually very helpful, insightful response. I think we have that to look forward to in our own lives.
I do worry about extinction. And I did read the long book about the 1918 influenza. And I saw that this is something that happens over and over again. This was nothing new.
Shall we open it up to see about other questions? John, let me hand things over to you.
Judith, awesome. I want to report that people continue to smile through your entire presentation across the screen.
Okay.
And what a wonderful way to celebrate, listening to your stories, what a wonderful way to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Peace Corps.
Right now I'm looking at all this. This is the first time I've looked at all your pictures.
We're all here.
Now I'm not scared anymore. Hi, everybody.
We won't bite. All right, RPCV family, let's have a question. Raise your hand and go ahead and use the unmute and talk so we can have an exchange with Judith. So is there an RPCV out there who has a question for Judith?
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Yes, David.
Going back to the Nigeria years, I was wondering whether you taught or you were busy the whole year round, or whether you had some time off where you could like travel around the country or something like that.
Yeah, well, we had time to travel between semesters, and also when the kids were rusticated, they all had to go home. So we went around and saw them because we made friends. We made personal friends with the students. If you're living in the same dormitory and brushing your teeth with somebody else, you get acquainted. And we did have our favorites. We all did. And so we got to travel all over Nigeria, really.
Question? Yes.
Judith, were you traveling in those 3 VW buses?
Yes, not only that, but we didn't group together much on our travels. And some of us got motorcycles, and we went in lorries as well, taking a chance when you do that, of course.
Alicia?
Yeah, thank you, Judith. This is so wonderful to hear all these details about history that we've heard about before, but from such a personal account, it's great. I wonder if you stayed in touch with anyone that you knew in Nigeria over the years, or if you've heard about how your students are doing.
We have a thing called a magazine called the Friends of Nigeria, and it comes out 4 times a year. So we keep in touch with and trade our stories in that. Also, Bridget and I certainly have kept in touch until she died of Alzheimer's at a very young age, something like 60. And others, yeah, we kept in touch, but not as a group, except we had a 25-year reunion in Washington when all the Peace Corps came back. And so our Nigerian group certainly met and caught up over a few days and went to Arlington Cemetery. I suppose some of you were there. We're there at the same time.
Kathy?
Yeah, Judith, I wanted to let you know that, so when I was in Niger, my first year was 1990, and I spent Christmas that year in Kano, Nigeria.
Yes.
With 2 friends. We crossed the border and made our way to Kano, which was really fun trip for like first big trip in Africa with friends, But my question is about if you had any observations about like relations between the major ethnic groups in Nigeria, the Yoruba and the Igbo and the Hausa. What was it like in the 60s?
Most of the students had roommates who spoke the same language as they did. But on campus, the lingua franca was, of course, English. There was dozens and dozens of different languages in Nigeria. And we didn't learn any Igbo. I think we hoped we would learn some Igbo in the training, but that didn't come up because everything was going to be in English.
Did you sense that like people, like the different major ethnic groups were tolerant of each other when they were in classrooms, or was there competition or?
No, we didn't hear, didn't seem to be, no. Everybody was friendly and kind and quite polite. And we felt welcome. We felt appreciated. I think we got laughed at, and that was okay.
Joan.
Thank you, Judith. This has been wonderful. You're such a pioneer when I think of just even being a woman, as my understanding is a lot of the earlier volunteers were more so men, white males. So I'm just wondering, sorry I joined late. I was in Gabon 1995 to 1997. And I'm just wondering, A, were you always a pioneer, you know, or, you know, were your other friends sort of like, you're crazy?
Well, some of them thought I was crazy, but I don't consider myself a pioneer. No, I just do what I want.
Great, I love that,
Enjoy.
that spirit of adventure. The other, what I was wondering was, how was telecommunications to your family? Were you able to
Those
contact?
little blue air letters.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have a telephone call in 2 years.
Wow, wow. Okay. And just, I was just wondering, I know nowadays it's very different with Peace Corps. They have internet, people go visit. Were in terms of for yourself or others, were any of your family able to come visit you while you were?
No, my family didn't come, but Shickley, Dave Shickley was in our group, and he was the brother of Peter Shickley, PDQ Bob, and he was always up for laughs, and and he was a violist and violinist, so he had his violin and viola, and we did a lot of music together. What was I going to tell you about him? Oh yeah, his mother came, and his mother was must have been a pioneer, because she was working on her PhD by putting dye into the river that goes through Rome and seeing where it came out, just studying the waterworks of Rome. So
Wow.
she came out to visit him, and she and he were on a motorcycle, and we went camping. About 6 of us went camping with Dave Shickley and his mother.
Wonderful.
Question.
My last question. I know I'm taking a lot. So when you were in Peace Corps, was it still under Sergeant Shriver?
Yeah, we were just the third group to go out.
Right. Okay. I was just wondering, what kind of messaging were you getting as a volunteer in terms of like your ambassadorship in the country? If you can recall, or maybe let us know
Mostly what we heard from Peace Corps was when they would send the Peace Corps physician around to check on us and see whether we were anemic or anything like that. We didn't have a whole lot of supervision.
Oh, interesting.
No.
Thank you so much.
I think it got more and more bureaucratic over the years, and I'm glad I went in the first batch, early batch.
Thank you, Judith.
Great questions. Great questions. Colleen.
First of all, that was incredible. Thank you, Judith. You're an inspiration. So you mentioned like the make do attitude, and you know, the Peace Corps volunteers had to plan to be useful. I love the story about reassembling the cattle bones. I think that's just incredible, and using it to teach anatomy. So I'm wondering, when you went there, because as you know now, Peace Corps has like these different sectors. You're either in health or education or environment. What was the structure of Peace Corps like, or was there really not much? And did you have like training when you arrived on site? Did you like
No
language at the beginning?
No,
No language training at all.
No.
Wow, I can't
that's
imagine.
because the students spoke so many different languages that it wouldn't have. The only one we needed or could have used much there would be Igbo. And I love languages, and that was one disappointment. I didn't learn any foreign language there.
Interesting. Thank you.
Questions? Unmute. Take it away.
Judith, just not a question really, but your recollection of the inaugural ball at the Armory. My parents were there.
Oh,
And yeah,
I
so
didn't see them.
Well, my mom's really short, Irish woman, but yeah, my mom worked at the Irish Embassy, and so they were able to attend. But that was a real highlight for them, and I remember them describing that snow too. That it was a really snowy night. Yeah, it was nice to hear about that again.
People?
A couple of days ago, I was trying to describe to somebody what an aerogram is. I guess that's what you're talking about in terms of communications. Peter, maybe you remember. You talked in your article, Peter, about
Oh, yes.
a phone call, I guess, when you got to Kinshasa. And I
Yes.
guess that was what telegated communication. But yeah, sending the aerograms, and I guess it took about 2 weeks when we from Zaire, from the DRC. It took about 2 weeks to come and go each way. So everything would be, what you'd hear about would be the reactions to what had been happening a month before. But,
And I never had a telephone conversation in 2 years.
Judith, you mentioned that a few of the volunteers wanted to be in a more remote location or not to be together with so many Americans. Did any of them leave early? Did everybody stay for 2 years?
Everybody stayed, but some moved to other locations.
Okay. Did any of them?
One guy was, one of our group was transferred someplace because he had climbed up the walls of the women's dormitory. He was sent somewhere else.
Did any of them stay long-term or, make lives and careers or families? Did any of them marry?
I think one of the women who went to a smaller school elsewhere ended up adopting a couple of Nigerian children, and she stayed in Africa for a while. But I don't think any others.
And do you know about any of your students? Have been in touch with any of them or hear about?
No.
Okay. One thing that's different.
Some faculty friends stayed in touch with for years.
So the volunteers coming back now, that they're all on social media and they're all friends with their students and colleagues, and I think that's something that's really changed.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Thank you for having me.
This was great, Judith. I'm going to ask you this. So the NIH record is interested in covering this. So I would like to ask everyone to put your cameras on so I can take a picture, and let's all applaud Judith as I'm seeing someone's keyboard there. There we go. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Well, let's all say cheese and smile, and thank you, Judith.
Thank you,
You're quite
Judith.
welcome. You're quite welcome. It was fun.
So, John, thank you so much for what you've done to organize this and your detective work and finding Judith and really helping to prepare her for this. It's really been terrific and much appreciated. And Judith, again, thank you so much. So we're the group of returned Peace Corps volunteers at NIH. There's, I think, 60 or so that we've been able to find so far, and we have lunch. We have the virtual lunch together once a month, and you're our pioneer. You're the first of the NIH returned Peace Corps volunteers. So we just so appreciate you sharing with us, and your guidance on living a good life. I think has really been very touching and wonderful to hear from all of us. So thank you.
Can I stay on your email list for these Tuesday lunches?
Sure, you definitely qualify.
Put me on your list. Put me on your list.
You're welcome to join us, but I think we will. We'll share your story, this reunion with the NIH record. But again, I would really encourage you, if there's other ways to share what you've written up, or we'll try to also share this video. I think there'd be a lot of interest and a lot of love for your story and bring together NIH and your medical career and Peace Corps in Nigeria. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks, Peter.